Pema Chodron, if you don't know her, you might want to check it out. She's a Buddhist nun and a sage, and she wrote a book called Pain is the Doorway. And I was listening to another, high vibe Swami guy, and he was saying essentially the same thing, that there are a lot of things that can trigger a spiritual awakening, and I think most often, he said, it's loss. The very thing that we think undoes us. Because in a way, what it undoes is our narrative, our ego, our sense that this is the defining thing we can't live without. Whether it's a job or a relationship or a dream of a certain person suddenly reconnecting with us or connecting for the first time, or... My dad went through something like that when he retired. And, and he could identify it. He said, first he couldn't stop crying. And then eventually he said, I'm in a state of grace. And I wasn't even sure what he meant, but it was a kind of peace that came over him that rather than identifying with that particular role, when it fell away, he was forced back into some kind of essential self that didn't have to do with the role or the status in society or in a company and sometimes the loss just opens up that bigger identity, that's the more to do with your expression as a, your corporate expression as a of the Great Spirit. The Great Spirit. So, at first, loss is so sorrowful, but it opens the door for something in yourself. That absence in you invites something in, and I think we talked about that. Maybe it was just yesterday. And I think there's also the kind of spiritual muscle that allows you to open. Something in us gets very tight, very constricted. This is who I am, and if I lose this, I don't know who I am. And then eventually, there's an opening. For me, it feels like it's right about here, like an actual aperture. First card out. High Priestess. That's divine feminine, somebody comfortable with the mystery and can't, or doesn't, let's say just doesn't translate it for other people. It's the ineffable. It's what we can't talk about. The minute we try to talk about the divine or, the universal essence or universal consciousness or whatever, it begins to be hard to translate into everyday language, into words, which are basically la, 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 trying to talk about the Great Spirit or whatever it is. And this one is tapped in, but doesn't try to do that work for somebody else. It's a card of water energy. Somebody who's connected to source, universal love or something like that. Moon energy. It comes and goes, it waxes and wanes, and we need to be that flexible because the thing is an aperture that opens and closes, opens and closes. We don't have a whole lot of control over it. 3 of Wands. That's a card of openness. Openness to the future, openness to what will come to us. Wands are directional. opening and closing it can come in because my expectations, one's energy, my intuition about it is open-minded to whatever ships come in or whatever happens when this future comes to me. Queen of Pentacles. That's a caregiving energy, a grounded, I know who I am in my 3D life. There's an authenticity and it's not flighty. It's earth energy. And this isn't flighty, but it's sort of like I can't speak about this, but I know it on a different level. Intuitively, I know it. One, speak to intuition. I'm open to the mystery. And at the same time, very grounded. This is you. This is you finding your ground. Not being sort of thrown off by expectations. Open to new feelings, open to something you don't really have control over. Death card. To change. To endings, which imply new beginnings. It's a card of Scorpio. So 2 water energies here. High Priestess, I see as Cancer. Somebody say, Pisces, maybe. Dramatic change, being open to change, being tapped into the mystery, and yet very grounded through the change. Something may be ending in your life. Didn't I say that that loss, pain can be the doorway, loss can be the doorway, because it makes room for the new thing. There's some skin being shed, perhaps a role that, your identity, your ego is attached to. And when that ends, who are we this time? And it can put us into great panic and sorrow. We don't want something to be over. It makes us feel maybe ungrounded or unhinged. And yet, you found your ground, or you will in the future. 3 of Wands. Hang on. We have in the hand 2 cards. Ace of Wands. That opportunity for a new direction or new life. Knight of Swords. It's a truth coming in. It's some kind of clarity coming in. Perhaps about the change, the ending of something, and the new beginning. For you, the Ace card. Something inspirational that ignites, almost beyond your control. Ace of Wands, 3 of Wands. Having manifested a new beginning, but it's not, Wands are active, but 3 of Wands is more like, I've sown the seeds for my future. Queen of Pentacles is sort of all about growth and the seed. I've sown the seeds for my future, and having tapped into this, into the mystery, over which I don't have ultimate control. I'm open to it. The aperture opens and allows for change. And our initial feeling, Scorpio energy, may be sorrow. Like, this person who inspired the quote was Eckhart Tolle. Talks about the now. That moment, that flash of I know the path. I have clarity about it now. Something's over, and now I've got a new future opening up for me. I think this is you talking. Six of Cups on the Death card. This is a card of the past, of nostalgia, of a past soulmate or somebody from your past. In Cups energy, somebody you love, loved and still love. But it's a willingness to let go, to open the door to the future. It's not dwelling in the loss, not dwelling in the past, not expending all your love on something that was. You never lose it. But it seems to me there's an instruction here. Listen to the message. It's talking about new life. Knight of Swords, Ace of Wands. And I'm sort of seeing this as your brain trying to get through to you. What's the brain trying to get through to us? Page of Swords. I had written down as well in the same notebook, is that you can approach it with fear or curiosity. And this is a card of curiosity. I'll look into it. I'll learn something from it. I'm a student of this message. Page of Swords. Swords speak to understanding and speech, and this is like beginner's mind. Once we let go of, we allow perhaps a relationship to come to a close. To allow in the new. Something more spontaneous. And we might not feel ready for that. We might in some ways want to keep it as a future possibility. It's kind of, yes, I'm open to this change, but not now. Not now. But this is a kind of getting ready for it. Anticipating it. Not with fear, but with an open, open to the change. With beginner's mind. Like not thinking it's going to be the same old thing or, because Scorpio is here. The Death card. Big changes on the level of the psyche that are actually opening up your intuition, your divine feminine energy of the moon, of things that come and go, wax and wane. Perhaps this is a long-term relationship that had a lot of that. Waxing and waning, opening of the heart, and then the change. I'm just hearing nature abhors a vacuum. Something comes in. It's not emptiness, it's openness. High Priestess? On High Priestess we have, oh my, Seven of Swords. You might have felt a betrayal. You might have felt somebody snuck away without an explanation. And that emptiness that was, that end of the relationship, somebody left without an explanation, left a void in your heart. But it also somehow allowed you to enter into your own life, Queen of Pentacles. It gave back something, Pentacles. It gave you some kind of inherent stability. Somebody may have ghosted, and it actually opened up a future. It opened, or it will, perhaps, some optimism, depending on how you think about it, sword energy. Swords are to do with the mind, so you're going to get a fresh look at it because you're curious. Maybe even curious about the pain of somebody's departing without an explanation. Tell us about Queen of Pentacles, maybe on the message, Knight of Swords. Is it a message, a message to Queen of Pentacles that's new, that's Page of Swords energy, that's beginner's mind, that's a new way of thinking about it, that maybe flips the script. I think maybe this person exiting your life opened a door for you. It's like they snuck out the back and something else is coming in. Something new, something inspirational and creative. I think it took a while, I would guess, to make that shift. It's a big change on the level of emotion. You may have thought this relationship would never end, Death card, and it did. Or it appeared to. It appeared to be like the door closing, and actually it was somehow a portal. See this sort of portal energy, these two on either side? It was a portal to the mystery. The mystery of connection, the mystery of love. It created a lot of questions for you. All this sword energy, why did they go? What happened? Who am I without them? And then, after the sorrow, there was this opening. Or there will be. Because you'll get curious about it. And it isn't so much, why did they do it? Why did they do this? Why did they do that? It's like suddenly you're reflecting on your own self. Who am I? Where am I going? I'm curious about this new journey. I have a new direction, Ace of Wands. Yeah, on Queen of Pentacles, the Strength card. I think you're having compassion for the whole situation. And Strength is Leo energy, and so is this. It's finding a new direction. Having compassion for yourself. Once you have, because Strength to me is a card of compassion. It's tapping into some inner strength. Some sense of, it's my life, here I am. The other person may have been false, may have been a liar, may have exited your life without an explanation. But I think it was important, or is important, to let that go. The ego wants to cling, doesn't like change. Thinks that change is about being emptied out, or a void, or a kind of death. But it's also about a new beginning. This is fire energy, power, purpose, direction. The creative spark for you. It's an ace card. And now you're facing the future with that fire energy, strength and courage. And I think the ability to let something go. Maybe someone you thought the love would never change. Everything changes. This too shall pass. That's both the sorrow shall pass, the relationship shall pass. Even if we stay in connection with somebody, it's always in flux. It waxes and wanes. Relationships aren't fixed and static. They aren't. Hopefully they aren't. There's allowing for growth is what I was going to say, and there's a card of growth. 7 of Pentacles. It's sort of looking at what did the change yield me? It opened up a future for this Queen of Pentacles on the basis of what they've invested in over time. There's a yield, or the yield, what did this growth yield me? Can I harvest something for all the time and energy I've put into it? And yes, I'm telling you, it opened up a door to your own power, your courage, your strength, your perseverance, and it opened up a future. And in fact, it's something you manifested, maybe after this happened. The loss. First there's sadness, then there's spirit comes in. I mean, look at it. Spirit comes in. There's an opening. On Ace of Wands, is it this? Yeah. Queen of Cups. That's the heart. That's the feelings. That's, the ability to love and be loved in a stable way. Queen of Cups, Queen of Pentacles. And it's the combination of the two. To me, this is a card of the blend, of the beast and the maiden, of the feminine energy in the world, but, strong and full of fire. The only masculine we have on the board really is this guy. Don't let unresolved questions sap your power. Be willing to ride the emotional wave, even when it entails letting go of your soulmate. We never really lose somebody we love deeply and over time. We take them with us, in some way that is inspirational and about new life, and not about waiting for the return. This can be the return. And I can feel, even in my own heart, a kind of no. I don't want to let go. I mean, lately I have let that happen. It'll allow for emotional growth. It'll stabilize you. It'll make you feel secure. This is something that can really rattle us and make us insecure. Why did they go? When are they coming back? All of these questions. Look to the future, optimistically, 3 of Wands. Be brave, be strong. Face the future with courage. Ace of Swords. Align yourself with truth of what happened. Whatever happened doesn't define you. Don't let it define you. Let this define you. And this is ever shifting, ever changing. It's fire energy. It somehow lights your path forward. You're aligned with the truth now. You're clear about something. And it brings you peace. There's the dove here. The truth will set you free. That's it, baby. The truth will set you free. First it'll, it may piss you off. That's a great quote, I think. The truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. It's hard if somebody leaves without an explanation, but it's also ultimately galvanizing. If you can look at it with, just shift it a little bit so that your brain says, I'll investigate this. I'll investigate the truth that's come into me. I'll be curious rather than afraid about what the future holds. Ace of Swords, Four of Pentacles. Somebody held back. And it may have been you. This is like buttoning down, trying to stay. Well, remember I said everything changes? It just does. That's life. And I don't mean that as a kind of bumper sticker. I mean, that's a hard thing to accept. And this is a kind of, I see it as an attempt to freeze time. Pentacles can speak to time. I don't want it to change. I don't want the loss. This is often depicted as somebody, hanging on. They don't want the situation to change. But a truth comes in that kind of forces the change. A change in status, a change in stability. Fours can speak to stability. You're strong enough to weather this. This is a fear of loss. It can be of loss of money or of loss of what you had that you think you couldn't live without. Pentacles energy, about life and what you have. There's a truth coming in, or a truth came in. Knight of Swords, Page of Swords. Like you had to reframe it. Get a fresh perspective, Page of Swords, on this truth. Is it this? Tower. That's radical change. Some paradigm getting blown up. And maybe it was the idea that we could freeze time. If I could turn back time. Big epiphany about that. About connection, about what happens when it all blows up. Some truth came in. This went down, kaboom. Some kind of security, some kind of sense that it can always be this way. And the universe says no. Change is inevitable. How we feel about something changes. How we feel, Scorpio energy. I see them both as a card of Scorpio. How we feel changes, and how other people feel about us changes, even in relationships like this. There's always the ebb and flow. There are always things to be learned about, how did that happen? There's a truth to be extracted. And it might be right around the corner. Something you've manifested. You may think you were trying to hold it together, Four of Pentacles, but in fact you may have not precipitated it, but something in the way you felt was too small. You were I keep saying you, it might be the other guy, hanging on too hard. Wanted to fix it in place. And it might have been that the desire to keep yourself safe or to keep a relationship safe. Somebody stepped out the back and it opened a door. They opened the door and stepped out the back, and you were able to enter into some knowledge of the ineffable. Something that can't be spoken or really understood and yet you're curious about it. You're not afraid, you're curious. Anything else? Oh man, we're going to keep going a little bit. Is it this one? There was an impasse of some kind. A roadblock. Something you thought you couldn't move beyond. Sword energy, you thought it. And then perhaps the universe stepped in and said, we're open to change. We're stepping in and destroying an old paradigm, perhaps a block. Ace of Swords, Two of Swords. There's something new, an opportunity for revisiting something with curiosity. And it's not, I don't think, turning back to what happened in the past. It's like ride the wave. We're beyond the block. It's interesting that there's a big moon here. I don't know if you could see it, but there's a big moon. Something was blocking emotional change. Death card, Tower. The change happened, and the mystery opened up. And sometimes the mystery can be scary and daunting. But look to the future with optimism. I can grow more abundance. Chariot. Card of Cancer. Cancer, Pisces. This is forward movement. It's alignment. And so, to my mind, is Ace of Swords. Something new, coming into alignment. This is, it can be considered fast. A realignment in the psyche that brings balance in. Weirdly enough, Two of Swords can be balanced too. It's thinking your way beyond a block, and it frees up something emotional. It's a card of victory and movement and alignment and reconciling opposites. In the heart. Maybe it's a heart over head decision. Two of Swords being head and a block. This being moving beyond the block in the realm of the heart, in the realm of emotion. That thing I was talking about with the opening. Being able to drive right through. Emotionally balanced. I'm sort of, because I'm not sure about this Emperor. It's sort of like taking control, taking up the reins. It may be coming into balance with your internal masculine energy that knows what to do and how to do it, how to drive that chariot, taking control of the reins. It could as well be the divine masculine who is blocked by overthinking and is now stepping into their heart in a balanced way. They may have been hanging on too hard to some kind of old paradigm. This is how it'll be. But it's not that anymore. Something has really changed dramatically. And I suspect, because of the way this reading has gone, it's you. Back in control. After some, fairly crappy thing that went down. Somebody may have lied to you or ghosted. It actually was galvanizing. I think you had or need to have or will have compassion about this situation, even about this person. you'll have a new perspective on it. I think you'll hear a truth. And it may come right from your insides. You know, the voice is inside the house. Isn't there something about that? It's coming from inside the house. From inside the house. This revelation. You may have been hanging on too tightly. Because to me, a tower is like, it's almost like the constraining thing. You know, it's like the plant that's in a pot that's too small. It gets root bound and kaboom. You were meant for bigger things. If somebody left your life without an explanation, I think you can let them go and look toward the future, toward stability, with compassion and courage. You know, will allow for this kind of forward movement. And in fire energy, boss energy, and what may come in is a new divine masculine. I'm not sure. Take it as it resonates. But I think if somebody left your life, that's a good thing. I mean, who am I to say? But I think, sword energy, that this person didn't belong. The universe blew it up. And they may have been, I mean, because pentacles speak to growth. Kind of hanging on too tight, or you were hanging on too tightly. It was inhibiting growth, emotional growth. Scorpio, Tower. Things are opening up now. They're opening up. I'll see you next time.